All right, let's do it. Joining us tonight, associate editor for Kotaku.com, Mike McWhertor, and editor for Destructoid.com, Robert Summa. Hello, guys. Welcome to The Loop. How are you?
Hi, Kevin.
Hi,
good.
Kevin.
Doing good. Robert, let me start with you here, because we said it just there. Almost 18 years now, nobody can seem to beat Nintendo. What's the deal?
Well, they know how to build handhelds ever since the first Game Boy. I mean, they captured that kid market, and they've been doing the same thing ever since. So basically, they know how to build the handhelds for the kids, for their core audience,
right.
And that's why they've been so successful.
Is it just the kids, though, Mike? I mean, 35 million DSs sold worldwide. Is it just the tweens and so forth that are playing Pokemon? Or?
No, definitely not in the case of the DS especially. I think that there are, with the DS's success, it has a lot to do with how they've been selling to older gamers, and mostly in Japan. And I think that as far as Nintendo's success on a handheld scale, it has a lot to do with how they've actually introduced that handheld and the games that they've had for it. I think that that's been Sony's biggest failing.
Well, let's talk about Sony for a second, Rob, because the PSP seemed to have everything going for it. I mean, beautiful screen. It had at least 35-minute battery life. They were saying, UMDs, it's going to play movies. It'll make you breakfast. It'll do everything for you. It's an all-in-one device. And most importantly, it had the PlayStation behind it. It had Sony's brand name. So what happened to what was supposed to be the Walkman of the 21st century?
Well, that's the problem. It had the PlayStation brand, and Sony thought that would be enough. But ultimately, it wasn't enough. The problem was the system itself. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy with the PSP. It was designed to be this all-in-one device, but it was never really good at the one thing that it should have been good at, and that was to play games. And it wasn't even that great of a Walkman. And all that people were basically using it for once it came out was to play old games. So right. it kind of killed itself just on the way it was built.
But, Mike, is the PSP dead as we know it, Mike? Because there was that EB Games ad that everybody's talking about. Trade up your PSP and enjoy the future of gaming. Is that fair to say already at this point in the game?
I don't know that that's necessarily fair to say. I think that EB ad might have been a little blown out of proportion. As far as the jack of all trades, master of none thing that Robert was talking about, I don't think that Sony did a very good job of capitalizing on UMDs and games. I think their biggest failing is that they introduced the thing too early. They forced Nintendo to show their Nintendo DS hand, and they just don't really have the right games for it at this point. I don't think it's dead in the water, though. I still think that they can salvage something out of it. And in Sony's defense, they really have carved out the biggest niche of the handheld handheld market, more so than anybody else. Attempts by Sega and Neo Geo and those companies, they really made no impact. But Sony's actually made a pretty decent impact on that market.
Well, Rob, there was Sega, there was Neo Geo, even the Atari Lynx at one point. There's all these companies trying to take a stab at Nintendo's market share. Now we've got, Dell rumored to be releasing a device. The N-Gage 2 is, I don't know what's going to happen with that. Hopefully it's not a Gizmodo-type deal, but it's coming out nonetheless. And now the iPhone might have gaming capabilities. Do any of these competitors, do they stand a chance at all?
Well, they stand a chance as far as going against cell phone and casual gaming markets, but going against what are now the two kings, Nintendo and Sony, no, they don't. They're basically, who can be the king of Bejeweled is what they're going to be. It's the casual games market. They are not going to be dedicated handheld gaming machines like the DS and PSP. So it's not even the same world as far as that goes.
Mike, what about Microsoft? What if, big old Moneybags Gates hops in here? They were able to make a name for themselves with the Xbox. Maybe they understand the handheld space as well. They've done a lot with mobiles in the past. Do they stand a chance?
They can spend as much money as they want, so they stand a chance in that regard. I don't know that they'll come up with a piece of hardware that will differentiate itself enough to convince people to drop a couple more $100s on another handheld. I think that it might be a little too late for them to get into the market unless they come up with something that's really just outstanding, has either like GPS or great internet abilities or something like that, something that really makes it distinct from a DS or a PSP. Well, I think that the PSP can still do a lot. I don't think Microsoft is really going to make a big impact.
I don't think the PSP is going to do a lot as it is, Michael. I don't see the PSP doing anything anymore. I think Sony just rushed this out. They tested the market. They saw what they could do. And then they're going to make it up with PSP 2. Wow. And as far as Microsoft, I think they're going to be vastly more successful than the PSP because now they've seen what Sony has done. They've seen the mistakes they've made. And sure. Microsoft's going to build a handheld that's going to improve upon what the PSP tried to do, much like the Xbox 360.
Much like they did with the iPod. They waited and they said, okay, we know what customers want. Here's the Zoom.
Yeah, they killed it.
Yeah.
Really nailed it that time.
Final word from both of you. Mike, real quick here. In Nintendo, will anybody ever knock them from the handheld space?
No. But Sony will, I think, have the opportunity to, cut further into their market share if they exploit the capabilities of the machine and really focus on making unique software and maybe even dealing with some connectivity
but
between
Nintendo
the PSP.
is staying number one, though, in your eyes.
Yeah, definitely.
Rob, do you agree?
Word.
Yeah, I think Nintendo will always stay number one. I think Sony will have their audience like they have now. They'll have an older gaming audience that wants to hack the system. But as far as a dedicated handheld game machine, Nintendo will always be king.
All right. Casual gaming. It's seniors and it's people who like Zuma Deluxe, apparently. But I'm so excited for it. I want to thank you guys. Thanks, Mike and Robert, for keeping us in the loop. Look, Nintendo, they may look unbeatable now, and I know it's easy to say, but remember a few years back when their home division was equally invincible? Yeah, exactly. Someone else might knock Nintendo out of the top spot. They could, but if we know anything from our gaming history, it's that it isn't going to come from a more powerful version of what's already out there. No, you see, the device that topples the big N will have to offer a new and innovative gaming experience that's unlike anything else. But unfortunately, the only company that's doing stuff like that right now is, well, it's Nintendo.
Attack of the Show, weeknights at 7, only on G4.